We begin tonight with an early health warning, in this case about two different disease outbreaks that we believe you should know about: bird flu and malaria. I will note, neither one represents anything close to what we experience with COVID, but they are outbreaks that we believe should be on your radar. Joining us now is Dr. Amesh Adalja, a senior scholar at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health's Center for Health Security. Dr. Adalja, welcome to the show. Good to see you this evening. I will say, we've heard about bird flu off and on now for a couple of years, but now it seems to be on the national radar. Why? How widespread is this?
Bird flu has been spreading through populations of the avian species for several months now at an unprecedented level, meaning that we've seen many different countries reporting major die-offs of birds, poultry flocks, and that's caused a lot of concern because the more opportunities the virus has to infect other species, including now mammal species, for example, we've seen sea lions die, we've seen cats die. That raises the stakes for when, and it's always when, not if, a bird flu virus finds its way into humans and spreads efficiently. And this really should galvanize people to prepare, to think about, do we have the right vaccines? Have we learned the lessons of COVID-19 to prepare for something like an avian flu pandemic? One isn't imminent, but this is just another warning sign that we're seeing that this is still a threat and will remain a threat.
Can it be spread from human to human at this point, or is it just from animal to human?
It does not have the ability to spread between humans. That's the last step an avian virus would need in order to be able to cause a pandemic. Right now, we see people that get infected have had very close contact with infected poultry. They may work at a farm, for example, or handle infected poultry. It's not something that we're seeing any type of spread between people, and that's reassuring. So it may not be that the current strains that we're seeing infect birds are going to be the one that causes a pandemic in the future. But the point is that an avian virus will eventually do that. That's exactly what happened in 1918. An avian virus got that capacity, and we need to continue to monitor this space because it will be, as I said, only a matter of time before one has that capacity. And I think we need to be proactive about it.
So how can viewers avoid this? Stay away from poultry. How concerned should they be?
The general viewer is not somebody that's going to come into contact with avian influenza. If you work at a poultry farm, for example, this is something that you already are probably thinking about. One thing is important is that if you see dead birds, for example, on your property, keep your animals away from them. Don't touch dead birds because we're finding that that's how, for example, cats are getting infected. So that's one thing. There's not anything specific we need to do other than to make sure that the government is actually not being complacent about this. They're thinking about strategies ahead of time and not being caught flat-footed.
And what is the government doing about it?
Right now, the government is thinking about using vaccines in the avian species. Many countries do vaccinate their poultry. In the United States, we've not been able to do that because of certain trade restrictions. That's something that's on the table now. They're starting to vaccinate, for example, California condors, which might go extinct because of bird flu. And I think we have to think about vaccinating domestic poultry like chickens and turkeys. And we also have to make sure that we are developing new vaccines that target the circulating strains of avian influenza so that in the event that we need to use vaccines in humans, we have them stockpiled. All of that's going to be part of this. And the avian influenza preparedness space has been something that's been developing probably since the George W. Bush administration. But sometimes when avian flu is not in the headlines, people stop thinking about it as a threat. And I think these cases are something that should remind us that it hasn't gone away.
Gain-of-function testing is something that really people learned a lot about during COVID-19. Is that something that has been used to test this bird flu as well? And should we be concerned about it?
There's no major concerns about the type of research right now with bird flu. Actually, some of the ways that we track whether bird flu has the capacity to infect humans derives from the gain-of-function testing or other experiments that have been done in the past where, for example, they've learned which mutations are able to confer the ability to infect human cells. So this isn't something that we're worried about what's going on in labs. Actually, we want more research on bird flu to understand how these viruses evolve the ability to infect humans.
Okay, before we let you go, I do want to switch to malaria because I also mentioned it. There are a handful of cases right now in the U.S. Obviously, this is something that can spread anywhere there's mosquitoes, which is all around the U.S. So how concerned should viewers be about that? And what are symptoms to know that that are red flags?
It's important to remember that malaria was something that was very common in the United States until the 1950s. And there are parts of this country that have the requisite mosquito. It's not any mosquito that can transmit malaria. It's a special type of mosquito called an Anopheles mosquito. And there are parts of the country that have them. And what happens is someone that's traveled to a malaria zone comes back with malaria and gets bit by the correct mosquito, and then you get some onward spread. This isn't a major threat to the United States. I think we'll be able to control this with mosquito control efforts, but it is important that people who are in areas like Texas, like Florida, where this is spread, be careful about mosquito-borne illnesses. And it's not just malaria. Remember, we also have West Nile as well. So that involves mosquito repellent and trying to avoid areas that there's a lot of mosquitoes. The symptoms of malaria: fever, chills, muscle aches and pains. But if you think you've been in one of those malarial areas, it is a medical emergency, and you will need to be put on anti-malarials because malaria can be a very critical illness in certain people if it's not treated.
Dr. Adalja, appreciate your insights tonight into these diseases and how we should be thinking about them. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.